Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Rafael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Rafael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Good morning, Gwen. How are you? Thank you so much for being on Coaching Call.
I am so glad that you invited me, Sifu. I really appreciate to be able to talk with you this morning.
And totally, it's very early for you. You're in California, I'm in New York, so it's 7 a.m. for you. Thank you for being here for sure.
I was happy to do it. I don't do it for everybody, but after our introductory call, it was like, oh no, this is someone I definitely want to be on with. So thank you.
I'm honored. So thank you. The way this show goes is really, I'm very curious. I just want to know more about you. And in that process, we start from childhood. Where were you born and who influenced you before you were a teenager?
So I was actually born relatively close to where I am now. I was born in LA, but I am a fifth and fourth generation native Californian. In the area that I actually live at this point in time. So it's very much in the very center of California. Folks that had really big influence on me when I was young, honestly, was my parents. They were super supportive in all the things that I was interested in, and that list was long.
That's awesome. But both parents play a different role in our lives. Talk to us about the different influences that your parents did have on you.
Well, so my dad's influence was very much about raising me to be a strong female. His mother was a very, very strong female, and so he saw the value in that. And my mom was also strong in a very different kind of way, and he also empowered her in a lot of those ways. They did have what we'd call a very traditional, marriage. Dad worked, mom stayed at home, raised the kids, did all of those things. Except that was only after my brother, who's my older brother, was born. Before that, their marriage was fairly atypical. Mom and dad started dating when mom was in 7th grade, and they didn't get married until after she finished her college degree.
Oh.
And they then waited 8-9 years before they had their first child, which is exceedingly unusual given that my mom is currently 95. So this was not at a time when that's the way that these things went. And so one of the things after they got married is they always lived on whatever the smaller of their two incomes were. They put the second income away, which allowed dad to go back to school and get a master's degree at some point before my brother was born, because it wasn't going to be a financial burden on them. And so those kind of very atypical, behaviors, I think, had a really strong influence on the way I was raised.
Oh my God, that was brilliant what you just shared with us. And everybody listening, if you are in a household of two incomes, move out and go with the one that makes the less money and live off of that. But it's brilliant because whose foresight was that? Do you know?
I don't know whose foresight that was. I don't know if that was my mom's or my dad's, or just a shared
Combination, right?
Conversation. But as my dad's mom used to say, that they raised each other, so it was no surprise that they were able to have a very long and happy marriage.
Wow. That's pretty. That's really, and you said unique, right? Different than what people are known to do. When we consider our lives, it's the people in our lives that influence us, whether we like it or not, right? What was the influence difference? Would you say, based on your parents?
You know, it was an interesting time because I'm right at the border of baby boomer and Gen X was when I was born. But because my parents are actually greatest generation parents, I'm raised a little bit more like baby boomer, but I still have a lot of Gen X, flavor and influence. And one of the things that was very different in our household was mom was always in charge of all the finances.
Mm,
For that generation was also a very unusual,
right.
situation. And so one of the things that I learned early on is I learned about finances and how to deal, with all of those things. One of the things that my mom did very early on, when I was probably a freshman in high school, I wanna say, it may
Mm,
have been a sophomore. We started a little craft business, just she and I together, so that she could give me the experience of being an entrepreneur very, very early on and thinking through those. We did not make a lot of money. This wasn't a big, what I would call a huge success by anybody's standards, but having to think through what that meant of getting product ready and how do we price it and how do
mm,
we sell it and go through all of those things. So a very hands-on experience in
wow,
being raised.
that is so cool. For your mom to have you go through that, to understand what entrepreneurship is. Was it easy?
Um, It was natural. I'm not sure I would call it easy, but it was natural. It made a lot of sense to me. I enjoyed doing it. We didn't do it for very long for a lot of reasons because it just didn't make sense as I was finishing up school to get focused on it, and it wasn't going to make sense to continue it as I went off to college. But back to just having some of that experience made me more comfortable in the business world, which turned out to be very valuable because I started working professionally the beginning of my sophomore year of college. So
Mm, very cool. So you talked about colleges. Now talk to me about your school years, right? High school, elementary. What was that like? Did you have a lot of friends? All that kind of stuff.
I was never super popular, and I had a circle of friends, but I was the smart kids. I was always the ones trying, taking the advanced classes and
Mhm.
getting the good grades and doing all of that. So that's one, obviously one circle of friends. We've all been through high school. We know how it goes.
Right.
But in college, where was when for me a big transition took place because I was planning on going to college to be a math teacher, and during my first year, I took a computer science course and did exceedingly well in it, and realized that I had a real natural gift in the world of programming. And so I had a teacher that was amazing and identified that and said, I want you to take this different set of classes for your second semester that will work for your math degree if that's what you
Mm,
decide to
right,
do,
right.
or will also work for a computer science degree. And by the end of that semester, I knew that this was what I wanted to do. And then at the beginning of the following year, he actually helped me get a job where I started working as a professional programmer my sophomore year of college. And
That's pretty cool. That's really
so most of my friends at that point were there was about 4 of us that were all, at college together, that were all
mhm.
at different levels, but working, with this company. And so a lot of my free time was spent, working. So because I was working probably 10 to 20 hours a week and doing a full load of school. So my social circle got a little bit smaller.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're so tight on time, How did you get that job anyway? How did you find that?
So the teacher, the company had reached out to our department, and the teacher said, "Yeah, I've got someone I think you need to, to interview."
Mm.
And they sent, I don't know how many of us they sent over to be interviewed, but I was one of the people that was sent over to be interviewed, and they hired me. And so mom has always laughed about it because I refuse to get a job at McDonald's or any of those things when I was in high school. They wanted me to work, and it was like, I'm not going to do it. I just like, I would tutor, so I would make
Right.
pretty good money tutoring, but it was like I was not going to get a regular job. And mom laughed, like, the first time you get a job, you're actually getting like a real job.
A real job, right?
A real
What
job in the thing that you're studying in school.
that's when we think about the intention, I guess your intention was there, and the fact that you said, I don't want to work at McDonald's or any of these fast food places, it speaks volumes into where your mind was, right?
Yeah, I was much more interested in doing, what I'll say is interesting work as opposed to just work for work's sake, right?
Monotonous work. Take this here, put it there. Take this here, put it there.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So
Yeah.
like I love tutoring. Tutoring was really fun because that was, a combination of taking my, my knowledge and my experience and combining it with the teaching, which is why one of the reasons why I thought originally I would end up being a teacher.
Right. Did you ever?
I never became a teacher
Mhm.
in the traditional definition, but I did spend a chunk of my middle years being a professional knitting instructor. I taught knitting
Really?
all over the world. Yeah, and so
All over the world. Wait. Go back a second. All over. How'd you get all over the world with
we would
knitting?
go on knitting cruises, and we would travel throughout, various areas for 2 and 3 weeks at a time, and so I would be in international waters teaching while we were traveling in between spots.
That is that's super cool. I mean, when you think about it, it's that your skills took you on board a ship, right? And you were
Yeah.
able to go to different countries. That is pretty cool. When you how'd you even start knitting? Mom?
Yeah, mom taught me when I was 10. Back to,
Mm.
like I said, mom was really, really supportive. Anything that mom was doing, I wanted to learn. And so at one point she was working on some little knitting project and I wanted to learn, and so she taught me. I made a hat when I was like 10 or 11, maybe 12, but it was
I
about
made a
10.
hat. I made
And
a
that
hat in home economics.
Right, and that was it for me until I was in high school, and then I knit a sweater, and then, in college, I picked it up as a hobby and really got interested and started doing a lot of it, and so that's when it became, kind of my main
Right.
focus hobby.
Yeah. So even Emilio Roman's knitting and cruise. Look at that! What a great combination. Um, and it's you said in like 8 or 10 you knitted a hat, and it's funny because it reminds me I was in home economics and I knitted a hat, and it was so cool that I can take this wool, right, and create something. Man, I
It's a
wish I would have
fascinating
continued.
process.
It is. I wish I would have continued. I could be making sweaters now and scarves.
Well, I
Um,
will tell you, if you've done it, it will actually come back. When I've taught
really.
beginning knitting, the first thing I ask is, have you ever done this, even if it was decades ago? And
Mm,
and people who raise their hand, I say, if they've got their hand up, don't feel bad if they learn faster than you, because they actually still know. Your hands
yeah,
actually remember. You just
yeah.
have to, your brain just kind of has to get re-engaged for it. But if you've done it, you could pick it up again if you wanted to.
I love what you just said that because and the old saying is, get back on the bike, right?
Hmm.
And it's so easy to do because we may forget, but it's embedded in that beautiful brain of ours, right?
It
And,
is.
and when you said the body remembers, the hands remembers, is because the body is also, look, we have this humongous brain. It remembers everything, every little aspect. I'm sure, and this has happened to me 1,000 times. I go somewhere and a memory just pops up out of nowhere. I'm like, where did this come from? And it was some trigger, right? Some sort of a trigger that gets us there. Gwen, so far I'm having so much fun speaking with you. Thank you for sharing all this incredible information that it really is eye-opening when we can say, you know it, you just don't realize you know it, right? You've done it once, that's all it takes.
Yeah, if you've had some success, you can build on that success.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, love that. So you started working 20 hours, literally part-time, in a profession that you were going to school for, something that you actually fell in love with. What happened afterwards? Did you go back and work for that company full time? How did everything
But
end?
by the time I graduated, I was actually working for another company doing similar kind of work,
Mhm,
and went through did that for a little while, and
mhm,
then I got married. My husband at the time got a job in a different town, and it made sense for me to go to work for one of the clients that I had been
mhm.
working for as an employee. Did that for a little bit, solved most of their problems, and decided to go out on my own and start my own consulting firm. And so I did that for a number of years. Then one of my mentors said, "No, I think you need to come and be my employee." So she hired me. And ultimately, then I got from that job, I got hired to work at Ernst and Young as one of their consultants. So, you know, kind of just kept going through these
Right.
various things. And as I moved into Ernst and Young, I started doing a lot more. And I had been expanding, what my roles were and whatnot over time. But I started doing a lot more project management and leadership, in the roles. And through a couple of different opportunities, ended up running an IT department for a
Mm.
phone company.
Wow. Wow.
So I just,
Mm,
I just kind of kept moving along with the tide as the tide went. But
mm.
more than once have had my own company of different types at different times.
And what was your company based on? How old were you when you started it?
When I had my own company, I was probably 24
Mm.
ish, I think. And I had my own company for about 3 or 4 years. And then my mentor said, "I want you to come work for me." And basically, I mean, we didn't do a big buyout. She just basically bought out my customer list. And so then I started supporting the customers that I still had at that point through her company, because she did similar kinds of things.
Nice, nice. What was it like when she said to you, "You need to leave what you're doing and come work for me"? Did
It
you
was really it was
feel?
really interesting because,
Mm,
her observation was, "You need to be an actual employee," because most of all of the other jobs, I had really worked as a freelance, employee, as
mm,
opposed to a regular
employee.
full-time employee, and she said, "You need to experience what that's like." And so I did, like I said, for a while, and then was invited to join Ernst and Young as an employee, but still doing consulting work, but consulting work in a much 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 larger organization, which taught me a whole different
Oh yeah,
set of skills,
I'm
right?
sure. I'm sure. I'm sure. And how long did you stay with them for?
Oh, must have been 4 or 5 years, maybe.
Mhm, mhm.
It was a long time ago now.
What? Why did you leave?
Um, I left because um, I was not going to be able to promote through the company. What it
Mm,
what had happened was, just before I transferred to a new office, the office I was originally hired at was being shut down. Ernst and Young had decided to close all of their small offices, and they were selling their small offices to, other competitors. Ours was getting sold to Deloitte and Touche, and some were getting sold to Price Waterhouse, and it was a kind of a case by case basis. But I had made some contacts at another office that was just getting started on a big project. But just before I left, my boss, who was a new boss, not the boss that hired me, gave me some really bad reviews, even though they weren't justified. And although I complained about them, I went through the process. One of the reviews was bad enough that when I went and started doing work for the new office in Kansas City, and I was doing outstanding work. I mean, they were giving me top scores all the time, and had access to one of the most senior partners in the Kansas City office. And I sat down with him at one point and I said, "It looks like I can't get promoted." And he said, "No." He says, "You can't." He says, "I've done all that I can do, but I can't do anything about it, because this review sits in, and because that person got fired."
Oh my goodness.
There was no way to retaliate on it. But at the time, there was another opportunity to start with a startup company that was going to be a startup phone company, way back when the local phone companies were deregulating. And he knew who one of the founders was. He had worked with him before, and he said, "It's a really great opportunity. You should go. You should take that opportunity." And so I did.
And what was the opportunity?
So I was brought in to lead the IT department. I was the 9th employee hired for this very, very early startup. And we grew it in about 2 years to about 2,000 employees. I had about 150 people working for me. So I ran the IT operations department for the company. And our IPO was scheduled to happen on a Thursday, and on Tuesday we had the .com crash in 2000. And so that killed our company because we were counting on the cash from the IPO.
Yeah,
and so we had to do a giant layoff. And
oh my goodness.
and I participated in the layoff and then was laid off as part of it as well. And so that's when I went to become a professional knitting instructor. It was when I took a big pivot. It's like, okay, I'm ready to do something else for a while.
So you were knitting all along. Once you got,
I was knitting all along. Yeah, I was knitting all along. But I had been teaching on and off, for 20 years at that point, probably. And so there was a whole series of activities, but eventually that was where I landed, and it was what I really enjoyed doing was the knitting instruction.
So my question is, how on earth did you get a gig that takes you on a boat, on a cruise ship, and you go traveling with knitting?
So
how did that even happen? That's crazy.
So there's actually there's several people that do this, but I had become friends with a travel agent who pulls these groups together specifically for this purpose. So it's not, the whole cruise ship. It's there's usually somewhere between 40 and 80 people that are part of this tour group. And part of what she organizes and works out with the cruise ship is that when we're at sea days, we get one of the, the little rooms, like the game rooms or whatever. And that during that time, I'm teaching the folks knitting. So then when we're at port, everyone has their freedom to do, whatever they're doing. So I only teach at sea days, and only for our group, not for the whole ship. So the group are, always, somewhat experienced knitters, and they choose which classes, I give them a list of classes, and they choose which ones they want to take.
So watching so many different shows growing up, was it like one of these cruise ships where there's turmoil and there's romance and there's all these different things? Talk to us about that. I'm thinking of The Love Boat, right? Remember when I was
right?
I used to watch The Love Boat.
I have no idea what else was going on in the ship. Our group was usually fairly quiet and well managed, but there were a lot of really long-term friendships that would develop between these folks because they would go on these knitting cruises to various locations, and many folks would be on, a cruise this year and then be on a cruise another year, and a number of the people would be the same people. And there were some really great friendships between individuals in some cases, and in some cases couples that would be on and they would start choosing to say, it's like, well, I'm thinking about going on this trip that she's hosting, and I'm thinking about this one, and it's like, oh, well, let's both go on both, and so so it was interesting. And I had the same experience because we did this, for a number of years, and there were a number of people that would see that I was going to be teaching. It was like, oh, that was someplace I wanted to go, and I saw you were teaching, so I signed up, so
That's
it was
pretty
fascinating.
cool. That's pretty cool. Good morning, Angeline. Thank you for joining us. So when we think about any rough waters, if you will.
No, actually, most of the cruises that we've been, we haven't had any sort of significant rough waters, but it was a lovely way for my husband and I to be able to do some really great travel. So it was a fun way for us to be able to explore lots of places. We went up to Alaska. We went through the northern part of Europe and came across back over to New York, through all of the northern islands, and through Iceland and Greenland. We've done several trips down through South America. We went through the Panama Canal. We went around the Horn in South America, started on the West Coast and ended up on the East Coast. And then, unfortunately, my husband wasn't able to go, but my mother-in-law went with me to China and Japan. So lots of really, and a cross ocean trip to Hawaii as well. So lots of really fun adventures. Yeah.
It makes everybody say, "Hey, you know what? I want to go on a cruise. Why don't I learn to knit?" And then I could become an instructor. So how long did you do that for?
I did that for about 15 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Was it lucrative, or was it just another way of exploring?
It was really more of a way of exploring. I mean, I did make money, but it was not a lucrative job by a long shot. And so it can be profitable, but I wouldn't call it lucrative in any way, shape, or form. But it was very fulfilling, and I really enjoyed it, and made lots of friends that I have maintained for many, many years. And it was the start of the business that I have now.
So when you say it was the start, what do you mean by that?
Well, so what I discovered while I was working in the knitting industry was most folks that owned yarn shops started a yarn shop because they thought it would be a really fun thing to do. They didn't think of it really as a business. And I realized a lot of them came without having any strong business background at all. And because of the work I had done all of the years prior, working primarily in the back end of people's businesses as a programmer and a project manager and whatnot, I really understood a tremendous amount about business, about all the aspects of business. And so for the industry association, I started teaching business classes, and that's where I started doing business consulting very early on for these businesses. And as I did so, I realized I probably have good information for lots of businesses. And so that was where I transitioned and started offering it to other businesses, and realized, my background is so broad. And having seen so many different types of businesses, and have touched so many different areas within the business, and my range of experience, that I was able to be a really good business partner in strategic thinking about what needs to be happening with the business, and helping them identify where the problem is.
Right. And you currently help what, like 47 different industries?
Yeah, I need to check my list to see if I need to update it all. But the last time I checked, which was probably within the last 2 years, I have worked in 47 different industries. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. What was one of the most challenging ones for you?
None of them were challenging per se. I mean, like they were all challenging and they weren't challenging, right? Because each one was a unique problem,
Correct.
that we were trying to solve. And for me, the what's the problem we're trying to solve is the fun part. That's like the really cool part. So I wouldn't say any of them were particularly more hard or not. But I will say probably the most unusual one that I ever worked with was the largest supplier at the time internationally of bull semen.
Mm.
So it was for this was back, gosh, how long ago was this? This was back in the early 90s.
Mm.
So, 30 plus years ago.
Mm.
And they were the biggest distributor of bull semen throughout the entire world, and I was helping them the system managing, tracking what was going where, and the ordering process and all of that, which was first interesting what their product was, because most people don't even think about that as a product, but
Right.
dairy, breeding dairy cows is a big deal to
Mhm.
to be able to get the right level of production that you want out of the cows. And so that's what it was based on. But what was also really fascinating, because they were in lots and lots and lots and lots of countries. It wasn't just, a few countries here and there. It was
Mm.
most countries. Was understanding the nature of getting a product into the country, and that
Mm.
in some countries there was some form of graft, where you had to buy off the the leader of the country, because they also had a herd of cows, so they got free free
Wow.
product to make sure,
Uh,
and so all of that was really, really fascinating to me. It was a fascinating business, because it was things that I had never been exposed
mm.
to at all.
Mm.
And it was a tiny operation. There wasn't more than a couple dozen people involved in the operation, but back then they were doing $100 million of business a year, which, that was a lot of
Oh
money
my
in
goodness.
90.
Who knew bull semen would
Yeah, exactly.
pay so
Who
much
knew?
money?
Yeah,
Right?
who knew?
Wow.
Yeah. So
$100
it was a
million.
fascinating business, because it was just so unusual.
Mm. I would say. It's
Yeah.
not, this is something you don't hear every day. This is the first time I've ever even heard of it, right? And I'm sure some of the people listening, or some of the people who are going to watch the replay, they're going to go, "Wait, what did I just hear?"
Yeah, no, it's what you think it is. But you think about it, breeding is a very important and lucrative
Lucrative, yeah.
piece for the agriculture industry, that is focused on trying to get the very best product that they can. So
Mm. Mm. So no bull there.
no bull there.
What are some of the other interesting industries that you said you'd work with?
Well, so one of the other most exciting projects for a long time, early on, I couldn't talk about because it was top secret.
Mm.
So, top secret's always fun. But I was actually involved in the process of bidding for the airwaves through the FCC. So it was a bidding process with the
Mm.
government that became Sprint Cellular
Wow.
way back when. And so originally it was Sprint PCS, so it was before cellular was out there, but there were special PCS licenses, is what they were called, personal communication services, and it was a whole bidding process, and I was the project manager from their outside perspective for the system, the automate the not automated, it was manual, but it was a connected
Right.
computer system for the bidding process. And so watching that, it was a whole top secret thing. You had to, do things in a very particular manner, and if you didn't, you were locked out, and it was a big deal. And then once the licenses were won, then it was the process of building a whole new organization. Sprint at that point was primarily a long distance company, and so they were building out a whole new organization, and I helped get the gig and get that process started for Ernst & Young at the time.
So thank goodness for that vice president, right?
Well, that was the thing. That was the type of work I was doing, and they wouldn't promote me. Ernst & Young wouldn't promote me. That's when the partner said, "Yeah, we can't promote you. You've done way more than what your level would justify." And he says, "And I still can't get you promoted." So that's when he said, "Go take this other opportunity," because there was another opportunity that came up soon after that.
So now you can talk about Sprint, right? Did you have to have clearance? Did you have to have?
I didn't have to have clearance per se, but we knew it was top secret, and I did have, an ID card that, you had to get into the door. The building that we were in was not marked as a Sprint building. It was they leased another building that was not, known as a Sprint building. I was not allowed to talk about what was going on, what their processes were, any of those things. I mean, now, like I said, it's decades and decades and decades ago, so it's no longer a secret. But at the time, it was secret. And then there, inside that building, there was also what they called the war room, which was another level of clearance, and most people didn't have access to that, but that's where they were actually doing the bidding process. And so, it was, like I said, it was another one of those very fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me share this video with you. Take a look.
The city never sleeps, and neither do the dreamers who build its pulse. From every corner of the globe they come. Visionaries, creators, leaders, each carrying a spark ready to ignite the world. This is not an event. It's a revolution of rhythm and reason. A symphony of minds. A movement of momentum. Sifu Rafael, Lancelot, together they set the stage for brilliance. This is the NYC experience. Mastermind, light up the city. They coming from the east, coming from the west. Knowledge on deck, put the truth to the test. Leaders in motion, hearts in sync, dropping wisdom so deep it'll make you think. They bring stories, sweat and flame, different faces, one shared name. Elevation, that's the sound. NYC experience, mastermind, where purpose is found.
And that just happened this past weekend. And so our next trip is to Tampa, which is going to be pretty interesting. So
it looks like you had an exciting group to be meeting with last weekend.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. I got to tell you that people are still talking about the food, the energy, all the great stuff. So when we think about energy, what was the energy behind all of what you currently are doing? What made you say, besides the bull stuff, and the secrecy and all that, what was the energy that really drives you to continue doing what you're doing?
I love finding the problem and helping someone solve it. And one of the things that I didn't realize, all of us have what I call a superpower. Something that we are innately born with or develop at a very young age or whatnot. And because it's a superpower, we often don't identify it because it's so obvious to us. It comes so easily. It comes so naturally, right? And I didn't realize that one of my superpowers until I started working at Ernst & Young and we're working with larger teams, was I can see the problem very, very quickly. I can identify where the root cause is. I can put all of the, dots together and line them up. And then within that, love being able to come up with the creative solution to say, so they've been trying A, B, and C. What if we tried Q? Something, completely off. And like I said, I didn't become really aware of it until I started working with some larger teams at Ernst & Young, because I would go into, there'd be 3 or 4 of us that would go into an initial conversation. As we would come out, I would say, well, it seems fairly obvious. It's, da, 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 da. And they would like look at me and say, how do you know that? Have you worked in this industry before? I'd be like, no. It's like, it's obvious, isn't it? Right. And that was when I started realizing that was part of my superpower.
Right.
Is to be able
to recognize things, right?
Yeah, to be able to see where that root cause problem is. And I've always loved solving puzzles, solving problems, trying to go through that process to say, I've got this much information, how do I get from here to there?
That's a beautiful superpower to have. Where do you think that comes from?
I really don't know. I don't know. I feel like it to some degree is innate. Because I don't ever remember not having some element of that. I loved puzzles of various types when I was a small child. As I continued to grow, I started liking the 3D puzzles that you would work and take apart and whatnot. I liked logic puzzles. I liked math puzzles. I liked, all of those kind of things. So I don't ever remember not being interested in puzzles. So I feel like it was probably more innate than anything for me.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I have a friend of mine, and when the minute she told me this, I'm like, wait a minute, that's how I think too. When I see something, she's an industrial engineer, right? And I said, what is that? She goes, well, I take what other people have put together and I make it better. I'm like, oh my goodness. That's because anytime I see something, I'm like, how can we improve upon it? How can we do this? How can we do that? Sounds like that's what you are.
Right? To a large degree. A number of years ago, I had a client say to me, you are such an out of the box thinker. And when she said that, it didn't quite resonate with me. That's not the way that, that I think of myself. And then as I processed it for a minute, I started smiling and kind of giggling. She said, what? And I said, I'm not really an out of the box thinker. I just know what's in everybody's box, back to the 47 industries. And so what I'm more likely to do is say, oh, we could take this solution from way over here, this industry that has nothing to do with your industry at all, and apply this, with a few tweaks and a few adjustments usually, are needed, but we can apply it in here and it's going to feel exceedingly innovative because it's not what this industry does. But at the same point, it's already tested. It works, in many cases, they've been using that for decades.
Yeah. I love that. It's one of the things that drives me as well, right? It's very interesting when we can think about something and how we can elaborate on it or help it evolve. Would you say your mom was more like that or your dad?
I'm not sure either of them were. Mom definitely liked puzzles more than dad did. So it would definitely be more toward mom than dad. Right. But dad taught automotive technology. So so both, I think, played in because he made sure that I understood how mechanical things worked. And so how things fit together, and some of those things were things that I learned young, and how to use tools, and the proper use of various types of tools. But mom was definitely more of the puzzle person and the game person. My dad did not like games at all.
All right.
But my mom and her side of the family, well, and my dad's mom also really loved games. And so I think it's a bit of both, but neither of them, I would say, were necessarily big puzzle solvers. That was kind of my own thing, I think.
Pretty cool. Would you say that you physically do puzzles today?
Some. I still like I like to do, now it's super handy with your phone for all the various, games and things, but the things that I really like to do are the New York Times puzzles. So the Sudoku, there's the spelling bee, those kind of things that are those kind of puzzles. LinkedIn now has some puzzles. I like doing the puzzles on LinkedIn every day. So I will tend to do those kind of things. And most of the projects that I approach as a hobby, I do quilting as a hobby. I still knit. All of those I also approached as a puzzle, as a problem to be solved.
Right.
And so I think I do. It's just it shows up a little bit differently. But I do, right over here in my bookcase right here, I do have a whole set of physical puzzles. I don't pull them out very often, but I still keep them because I really do like them.
That's nice. But life is a puzzle, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that really is why I love the work that I do now, is because every conversation is about figuring out, are we actually solving the problem that needs to be solved, or are we just, scratching a surface issue, right? And once we figure out the problem that needs to be solved, then that becomes the puzzle. What are the ways? And one of the things that I will say often is there are usually in the world lots of right answers. There's rarely a right answer. There's usually lots of right answers. And the tricky part is figuring out what is your best right answer.
My gosh. I love that you just said that. I love that you just said that. I teach Chinese Kung Fu. And so when a student says to me, how do you use that move? And I'm like, if I show you, you'll only know one way. I said, figure it out, come back to me, and I'll let you know if you got it. Because there's multiple ways of handling that situation. So I don't know, spoon feed you. You're old enough that you can feed yourself, right? So figure out what is the flavor here, and if it even aligns with you, and then we can make corrections. And I love doing that because it really helps another person to expand and not always be given the answers, right? Because we should, in this day and age, I know AI is huge, but we should still do our own research. We should go and look up things. We should explore, right? Because
and experiment.
Yeah, I mean that's so much fun that way, right?
Yeah, it really is. And most of us only can learn so much intellectually. We have to experience it in some more tangible way, right? It isn't necessarily a physical way. Sometimes it's just an emotional way or whatever, but we usually have to experience it in some more tangible way before we really understand it. And so a lot of times people will come and my business is everyday effectiveness, and they're like, what is the best way to fill in whatever blank? Often it's about productivity and time management, task management, and those kind of things. And the way I will describe it is, I have a really huge toolbox, and I'm not going to tell you that you've got to use this particular hammer. We're going to figure out what which hammer is actually the right hammer for the problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
Right. Because technically they could all work. And quite honestly, I could use the back of my, eyeglass case as a hammer as well. Right. Depending on what it is that we're actually trying to do, how big is the problem, how important it is that we use the absolute, right tool. Sometimes the eyeglass case is the right tool for the hammer because it's super handy and it's
right there.
It's right there. It's not a big deal and we just need to deal with it. Right. But long term, we are not going to build a house with an eyeglass case. Right.
We hope not.
Hopefully not. It's not going to last. So
I gotta tell you, Gwen, owning a wood shop, I have multiples of the same tools in different sizes and varieties. Like you talked about the hammer. There's a hammer. I have all different sizes of hammers and what they do, but also think about all the screwdrivers. I have a drawer with probably 80 different screwdrivers. And people are like, why do you need so many screwdrivers? Well, they all serve a purpose.
Yeah.
And the same thing I have with wrenches and all that stuff and nails. I have boxes and boxes of different nails, different screws, even though it's just a screw. But if you don't know how to use that screw or what it's for, yeah. I love this conversation, by the way. So thank you. Let me share one more video with you. Take a look.
You followed the rules, tried the restrictions, counted the carbs, the steps, and the failures. You're not lazy, you're exhausted from doing it all without real change. What if the problem isn't you, but the plan? Sifu's Mind-Body Method is a 90-day transformation built on 7 unshakable pillars: mindset, movement, nutrition, hydration, fasting, journaling, and faith. This isn't another shortcut. It's your structure, your strength, your reset. You don't need harder, you need better. Ready to begin? Start today.
I think a lot, and the reason I started that whole process is because I see a lot of professionals who are so focused on earning that they forget the most important tool. And we're talking about tools. It's their body, right? Their mind, their everything. So that's why I started that. And if anybody's interested, just reach out. So when you go ahead.
I was going to say one of the folks that I spend some time with, Joe Polish, will use the example of what we call the $1 million racehorse. Mm-hmm. If you had $1 million racehorse, would you feed it junk? Would you not let it sleep? Would you run it to death? No, you would take really good care of it. And in your business, you're the $1 million racehorse.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. When we and so, because you know so many industries, have you ever done racehorse industry?
I have not. I have. That is not one that I have done as of yet. Although I did have a client call. I had a sales call with someone who was in the professional show jumping, and she did not become a client. Right? Yeah, she did not become a client, so I can't count it. But but I have talked to people that are near and about.
Yeah, I've known people who work equestrians, competed very much so, and then I know somebody who used to do the races. They weren't on top of the horse; they were in the buggies behind it.
Oh yeah.
And he goes, "That was crazy." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, you're not that short to be a jockey, right?" He goes, "Yeah, because I wasn't on the horse. I was not on top of the horse. It's a different game." I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty interesting." So we learn all these different things with communication, right? Would you say that's one of the most important aspects of your business?
I think communication is the most important aspect of every business.
Boom. She said it. I'm just clapping behind it.
um, because anything that you're doing is going to involve another human,
Mhm.
whether it's even if you're a solopreneur, and so you don't think that, I don't have staff, but you've got a client, you've got a customer, you've got a somebody, right?
Mm.
That's going to be another human that you're interacting with. And I personally find, I'm guilty of this myself, that we all feel like we're pretty good at communicating because we start so young, right? It's the second big milestone, walking and talking, right?
Mhm.
And so we do it for so long, we think we're good at it. But the older I get, the more I realize that we never get that good at it.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
it is a place that we need to constantly be striving to get better at.
Yeah, without a doubt. One of the things that I've heard people say, yeah, I'm a great public speaker, but they don't stop speaking. And I'm like, you don't even take a breath, right? So, in order, I believe, and because I have a communication school as well, we have to understand that when we communicate, it has to make an impact on the person receiving the message. Because if we just talk to talk, when I'm making the impact that's necessary to communicate properly.
Right.
Uh,
Talking and communicating are not the same thing.
no, because you can have a 2-year-old talking, they're just learning how, right, to organize words and so forth. Uh, but why is it that when we learn to speak, we learn how to put sentences together, and then when we're really good at it, we throw it out the window and we jumble it all up?
You know, I think, part of it I think is just our own self, right? That we get
Mm.
caught in our own brain. I'm sure I've had enough conversations. I know I'm not the only one, and I think it's probably true for everyone that we've got these voices in our head that are going so much
Mm.
that I think it often distracts us from doing really good communication with another person.
Right, right. Gwen, we're coming to wrapping it up, and I think, my gosh, I love the energy you bring, your insights and your foresight. What can somebody expect? And I'm going to put your website up here. What can somebody expect when they connect with you?
So they will get much like this conversation. I am very forthright in the way that I approach things. I often will say things that are contrary to what is common practice, because
Mm.
common practice is often held up as best practice, but it's
Right.
not. It's just common
Mhm.
practice. It's just what everyone knows to do. And so I will be contrary. Like I said, I will pull something out of somebody else's box that is common practice over here and say, huh, what if we put this over here? What would that look like?
Mhm.
I will ask hard questions. And the main thing that I do with my clients, besides helping them, have a thought partner, a strategic thought partner, is to hold them accountable to
Mm.
actually doing the thing that they say that they want to do. And for me, accountability is not task management or shaming or any of those things.
Mm.
It's about really reflecting on decisions and choices and activities, and then looking to solve problems wherever
Mm.
wherever the problems arise.
Yeah, yeah. It's very interesting because in order for me to get a leg up, if you will, or leverage what I do in all the businesses that I do, I don't always necessarily talk to the industry experts on that. I go to talk to different industry experts because they have a different viewpoint and they
Yep.
have a different way of doing things. And I'm like, well, why don't I adapt that into this business or put into that business? Because I also run a martial arts school. And to be honest with you, after a while, I used to go to the martial arts trade shows and I was like, it's the same nonsense.
Mhm.
Same, 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 same. I said, and it's boring. So then that's when I started going out to different trade shows of different industries And my goodness, did the level go up for me? It was like night and day. And I was like, yes, this is what I need. And thank God I continue to do that. So thank you for giving us this insight, because it's a great one, right? So if you're an author, you got to read other books than the ones you write.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Gwen. And I got to tell you, I have 10 shows. I want you on all of them because you're phenomenal.
Well, thank you so much. I have really enjoyed the conversation. It's been a very, very fun conversation for me to have with you this morning. Like I said, I got up earlier than I normally do, and I had no doubt it would be worth it, and it was 100%. Thank
Oh,
you, Sifu.
thank you so much, Gwen. And have yourself an exceptional. Now you have a long day ahead of you, not longer than anybody else, but it just seems longer, right? Because you got
Right.
up earlier. But thank you so much. And everybody, do me a favor. Her website is going across. It's everydayeffectiveness.com/clarity, because don't you want to be clear in your business, in your life? So reach out to, now I'm going to call you my friend, because this is not the last time we're going to talk, right? This is the second time, but we're going to continue. She's going to come on other shows and impact more. And some of my shows are later, so you'll be okay. um, and then you never know, you might see her at one of our New York City experience events. So thank you again. Everybody, make sure you share this show, because I guess what? I'm going to watch it again. There's so many nuggets in here. Great stuff. Make sure you share it with somebody that needs to hear it. Maybe you need to see it again. Thank you, everybody. Have a blessed day.
Thanks again.
All right.